In Lesson 1-4, you will learn how to add integers. In our first example, we're going to use a number line to help us add integers. If we are trying to find -4 plus -2, we're going to start at 0 on the number line and move to the left 4 units because it's -4. And then if we want to add -2, we're going to move 2 more units to the left, which brings us to -6 as our final answer. In our second example, we're going to start at 0 and move to the right 5 since it's +5. And then we're going to move to the left to -2 since we're adding a negative, which brings us to 3. Another way we can solve these same problems is using 2 color counters. The yellow is going to be for a positive, and the red is going to be for a negative. In our first problem, we have -4, so I'm going to pull up 4 negative counters. And then we're going to add to that 2 more negative counters for a total of -6. If we go back to the second example, we're going to start with 5 positives. So here's 5 positive counters. And then add 2 negatives. Now we can go ahead and actually cross out 2 positives and 2 negatives because of the additive inverse property. A number plus its opposite is always equal to 0. So 1 plus a -1 is 0, which leaves us with just 3 positives. Another way you can look at these problems is with some rules. Notice in our first example, we had 2 numbers that had the same sign. We added the 2 numbers together and we kept the sign the same. In our second example, we had 1 positive and 1 negative. So instead of actually adding these 2 numbers, in order to get 3, you would have to subtract the 2 numbers and then keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value. So while you can use counters and number lines to help you with integers, you will want to just get these rules into your brain to make it go a little quicker. If 2 numbers have the same signs, you'll add and keep the sign. If 2 numbers have different signs, you'll subtract and keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value. Remember, different signs, find the difference. You want to pause the video and try these ones on your own. 3 plus a -4, different signs. So I'm going to subtract 4 minus 3 is 1 and keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value. -4 plus -5. These are the same signs, so just add them up and keep the sign. -9 plus 16 is different signs, so find the difference. 16 take away 9 is 7, and keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value, so it's +7. -9 plus 5, different signs, find the difference. 9 take away 5 is 4, and keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value, which is negative, so -4 is your answer. In our last problem, we are going to add 3 integers together. There's 2 different ways you could do this. You could just work from left to right. 8 plus -6, different signs, find the difference. 8 take away 6 is 2. Keep the sign of the number with the largest absolute value, which is positive, and then add 5. 2 plus 5 is 7. Or using the commutative property, you could add add the positive numbers together first. 8 plus 5 is 13, and 13 plus -6. Different signs, find the difference between the two, which is 7, and keep the sign of the greatest absolute value. The last problem says Eric's savings account balance is $235. What is his balance after he uses the ATM to withdraw $58.67? We're going to start off by writing a problem to represent the situation. If he starts with $235 and he withdraws 58, one way to show a withdrawal is to show it as a negative. So plus a negative $58 plus a negative $67. Now, if we just worked from left to right, we would have to do subtraction twice because we'd have different signs, and most people I know would prefer to add over subtract. So instead of just working from left to right, let's use the associative property and group these two together and do this first. Negative 58 plus negative 67, they're both the same sign, so you're going to add those two numbers together. 58 plus 67 is a negative 125. Now these two numbers are different signs, so you're going to actually subtract them. 235 minus 125, and you end up with 110. And you're going to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value, which was positive. So he has a positive $110 in his account.